Joining us live now from Ontario is Jason Unruhe, who is a political commentator, and he's joining us live now via Skype. Jason, thanks for joining us. What do you make of these ongoing drills? We know that North Korea is very sensitive about them, but the U.S. seemingly insists on continuing with these.
Well, of course, this is very typical for the U.S. towards the DPRK in the very least. They've always carried out acts of aggression like this, even if only symbolic, towards the DPRK to let them know that they are not going to back down, that they know that they are the superpower of the world and they can do whatever it is that they want to do. This is a very unwise move, given the fact that we've already been told that U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is already carrying out negotiations behind the scenes with the Kim Jong-un government. It makes many others wonder why they're taking these aggressive actions while there is diplomacy ongoing. You would think that if you were serious about having diplomacy, that you wouldn't carry out such provocative acts just like this. One wonders if this is an attempt to try to intimidate the DPRK into being more receptive to U.S. demands.
And so how do you think the North will react? In the past, the North has reacted by carrying out more tests, which it's a vicious cycle, isn't it, in a sense?
Very much so. The DPRK has made it very clear that they are never going to back down from their right to independence, and they have been willing to weather whatever it takes in order to do that. They have responded to military drills like this by carrying out drills of their own, carrying out missile tests, or carrying out nuclear tests themselves. The DPRK will respond, and I see it very unlikely that they won't. It's very typical that if there is a demonstration of power against the DPRK, they will respond in kind to show that they are not intimidated. And once one side does it, the other side's going to go back, and a lot of it is posturing, which usually ends up hindering the negotiation efforts that are going on behind the scenes.
As a final thought then, Jason, I imagine the South Korean government isn't very happy about all of this because Moon Jae-in came into office wanting more negotiations with the North at some level.
Yes, he was very much elected on the premise of having a softer and more sunshine policy towards the DPRK, as opposed to the very hardline conservative stance that his predecessor took. And it's one of those things where we see that the South Korean president wants to do one thing, but the U.S. military occupying their country is doing quite another. If this is not an issue between the North and the South, I mean, it is their peninsula and they have every right to struggle over the future for it. The U.S. should be bowing to the desires of the South Korean government. But it seems that as the U.S. does occupy the country, they're certainly not willing to make that kind of concession.
Very well, Jason. We'll leave it there at that. But of course, as always, we appreciate your insight.